So what we're going to do is we're here to expose it, let people tell their story, and let everybody in the public see the horrors of the court system in Suffolk County, New York.
Long Island Backstory with Chief Correspondent Gary Jacobs.
Good afternoon, I'm Gary Jacobs, and welcome to another edition of Long Island Backstory, Long Island's news alternative to Cablevision, Altice, and the Newsday monopoly. Today's a great show. As many of you know who watch the show, I do a lot of things about politics, I do things about corruption, I have doctors, lawyers, but this is the first time that I actually had a chef on the show. And I just want to tell everybody watching how this came about, because it's sort of an interesting story. So, I don't know if you can see because this thing only does half my body up, but those of you who have seen me in full life know that I do love food. One of my favorite of foods is Italian food. And when I want a good Italian dinner, normally what I'll do is, if I don't feel like going to Manhattan, I'll go to Arthur Avenue in the Bronx. I have my favorite place, and I'll get a great dinner. But about 3 weeks ago now, I was with my girlfriend who lives in Nassau County, and I said, you know what, I'm in the mood for a good Italian dinner. Sometimes when you have a tough day, to me that's comfort food. So I said, let's go out for Italian. She said, well, you know what, I work in Mineola. There's a place right by my office that I've heard has great food. It's a small, sort of looks like a hole in the wall, but let's check it out. So we go into Eric's Italian Bistro in Mineola. We sit down, and I said, you know what, they had all this fancy shit on the menu. I said, I'm just in the mood for some comfort food today. Let me get a lasagna. My girlfriend made fun of me. She said, anybody can make lasagna. But I said, I'm in the mood for lasagna. So I ordered lasagna, and this thing comes out, and I'm telling you, this was the best lasagna I had in my life. Seriously, I was so impressed with it. And she was making fun of me because I was, when you have a good meal, you feel good. I do anyway. So I'm eating my lasagna and saying, where the hell did this place come from? Beautiful decor, we're enjoying our dinner, and we're not fighting, which always makes it a nice dinner too, when you're not fighting with your girlfriend. And all of a sudden, out comes the chef. He comes up to the table and says, how's your meal? And I said, oh, it's unbelievable. And we started talking, and that's how I met my next guest, George Echeverria, which the hardest thing was figuring out how to say his last name. But George Echeverria came out, we started talking, and I could see this guy had so much passion, really. He had a lot of passion in what he did. And I explained to him that I travel a lot for business in my real job, my day job. And when I travel across the country, I want to go out, and I said, give me a local place. I want to go to a local restaurant. I don't want to go to Olive Garden or one of these chain restaurants. That's fake Italian food, and it tastes the same wherever you go. I want food with personality, and I want to enjoy it. And that's what I found at Eric's Italian Bistro. So, enough of my talking. You guys didn't come to listen to me speak. Our next guest is George, and George Echeverria, welcome to the program from Eric's Italian Bistro.
Gary, thank you for having me.
That was a long intro. I'm out of breath. I need a lasagna. So, I got a lot of questions I wanted to ask you, and because you're the first restaurateur I've had on the show, okay, I had a lot of questions that I've been wanting to ask. First of all, let's start at the beginning. How did you get involved in cooking?
Oh, Gary, I've been in the restaurant business my entire life. I mean, I started when I was 14. From being a busboy, dishwasher, line cook, waiter, even bartender, host. I've done it all. So there has always been a passion for cooking in my family. From my parents, from my uncle, something that we inherited from not just myself, but my siblings as well. And then I said, this is for me.
So when you were young, did you a lot of, I guess really, a lot of girls, their mothers teach them how to cook, right? So did your parents teach you how to cook when you were younger? Or did you something you say, hey, I want to see what you do? How does that come about when you're younger?
Well, you are, when my mother would make us breakfast and she would come and say, oh, I'm going to make you scrambled eggs. And slowly I started saying, Mom, how about next week we do an omelet instead? Let's put a little twist to the scrambled eggs that Dad likes. Let's do something. And that's how I think it started. Eggs. Imagine that, Gary. And then as I continued on, I would get involved with the dinner, and I would be with my uncle, I would be with or my mom, or even just with my sisters. You know, we were, my parents would always be working. A lot of times we had to cook for ourselves, and you know what? I took a love to cooking. It went from having to do it to help the family while my parents worked to, you know what? This is awesome. To see my sisters that smile once I would be finished cooking, and then see for a Thanksgiving dinner, they would be like, George made that, George made this, George made that, and see everybody's smile on their face.
That was one of my questions. I didn't ask, but as you were saying, I wonder if you enjoy cooking for yourself because it tastes good and it's rewarding, or is it because seeing other people enjoy your meal?
It's both, Gary.
Yeah.
It's definitely both. I mean, in your intro, you said about your belly. Well, so am I. So I absolutely enjoy.
But you know, if
food.
there's a food shortage, you and I are going to be the last ones around. So.
Absolutely.
That's a good thing. So, what is your background? Because I know the food is Italian, but there's some different types of foods in the restaurant that to me aren't traditional Italian. So. What is your background?
Well, for my family background, I am part Sicilian from Messina. I'm also part Spanish from Chile, South America. So between the Sicilian and the Latin in my house, I mean, when I talk temper, they would flare all over the place. But also the cooking styles. You know, the both cultures absolutely love.
Are they
food.
different styles though, or are they similar styles
No,
of cooking?
there is definitely. And that's what I love about food. Even within one dish. You mentioned lasagna. You drive 10 miles from one city to another city in Italy, and it's completely different. So no, it definitely varies.
Right. So when you got out of college, did you go right into the restaurant business?
Yeah, well, I did it throughout while I was going to college, even high school. You know, it was great because I would work. You know, the hours just happened to happen. The restaurant hours is when school is off.
Right.
So it was perfect. So while I was in college. That's how I paid my way through college, you know, in the restaurant business, you know. And then I was lucky enough to have worked in some high-end restaurants with some very extremely talented chefs that actually introduced me to a whole different culture, for lack of a better word, of the cooking itself. And I loved it. I love the details. I love how you get a dish. And I remember, I'm never going to forget when one of my first chefs that I worked with goes, you take a dish, you look at it, and explore it. Because you lift this, you lift that, and you are going to find treasures within one plate only.
Right.
And I was the first time, Gary, I looked at him and said, this guy's nuts. But then I realized exactly what he was talking about, and I absorbed everything as I moved on within my career.
So when did you open your first restaurant?
My first restaurant, I opened Soigné in Woodmere. That was my first baby. That was I did this at the beginning of 2001, and it was in Woodmere. It was a French restaurant, Soigné. And things went very good for me. I was named one of the first best newcomers and best new chefs and everything else. And things worked out very nicely for me there.
Good. And then when did you open the current restaurant where I met you, Eric's Italian Bistro? And how did you come to find that location, and how did that come about?
I did the French cuisine, and I was at Soigné for close to 10 years. And I respect the French cuisine very much. But my passion, because of my heritage, you know, Italian was always in my heart.
But you were trained in French cooking, I believe,
yes,
right?
Yes, that's correct.
So you have training in that
yes.
also.
And until today, Gary, don't take it wrong, I still, even at Eric's Italian Bistro, I utilize many of the French techniques, even for Italian dishes.
Is it the sauces? Because that's more French. Because I noticed
it's the sauces. It's the searing, how you treat the protein before you throw it in the oven. I mean, it doesn't have to be. Someone wants whether it's a salt oreganato. You can treat the salt before just drizzling with your breadcrumbs, your seasonings, Italian, which is the Italian touch.
Okay.
You know, so there are ways that you can treat the protein that I learned from French cooking that I think differentiates me from other places. I've been now at Eric's for close to 5 years now, and very lucky. You know, and I love Mineola. Mineola is like the capital of Nassau County. You know, we have the courts, we have Winthrop Hospital.
And I think people, listen, coming out of the courts, coming out of the hospital, you want some comfort food and you want to feel good. So I think, coming out of those places, it's nice to go into a place and Eric's, and I sound like I'm doing a commercial for Eric's Bistro, but it's a very warm place. It's sort of like a dining room. I felt like it was more of a family. It was fancy, but comfortable.
But Gary, wouldn't you agree? Old Country Road, one of the busiest roads in Nassau County. But once you go through those doors, it's like you're away from everything. It's like
absolutely.
You took a plane and somehow you are in Italy.
Yeah, no, I was pleasantly. I wasn't expecting it. I think that's why the whole experience was like I wasn't expecting what I walked into there. So now let's talk about the menu, and let's show the menu on the screen as we're discussing the menu. So how did you come to create a menu? How does this come? Do you hire a menu company? I don't even know. How do you start? Where do you even begin?
No, this is creating a menu. That's when the executive chef, me, gets to show your soul. First of all, I want to respect the traditional Italian. I also need to...
You don't want your family getting pissed at you.
Exactly. Also, I want to maintain the non-traditional in Italian, but yet American inventions such as the Parmesans on the menu. Comfort food, for the community. But yet, I also wanted to be able to portray my innovation. And that's why on our awning, on our business cards, it says traditional and contemporary Italian cooking. Right. So there's a twist that I can give that gives me the option to be different from other restaurants, other Italian restaurants. Italian restaurants are all over Long Island and some extremely wonderful restaurants. So for you to stand out and for you to be able to please a broader range of the clientele, I appreciate the fact that I'm able to do some innovations.
Okay, I also noticed that you had some different types. I mean, I saw all the traditional things that we spoke about. One of the things, I'm sure you don't remember, but I saw one of the other customers got something that came out like sushi, and I asked you, and I said, "What the heck is that?" And you said, "Oh, that's Italian sushi. That's my invention." So
isn't it beautiful, Gary? Though you see that, I was like, "What?"
It was. You know what? Because you want to have an experience, and I would think, like, especially if you're like on a date with somebody, it gives you something to talk about. And I saw it, and we were both looking. What the heck? And you said, so tell our guests about the Italian sushi.
Well, Italian sushi, we eat with our eyes. And it's not, of course, the taste is the key component. But you need to make that presentation of something to be different, to be eye-catching. So, yes, what I did is, what is an Italian sushi? It is a contemporary take to a cold antipasto. It is the eggplants, sliced, very thinly sliced. We grill them, and then I do the orzo, Italian orzo, prosciutto, roasted peppers. I roll it, and then I cut it to simulate sushi from many Japanese restaurants. And then the wasabi is replaced with pesto, which is the pine nuts, basil compote, and then some fresh mozzarella. And voila, we have Eric's Italian sushi.
Now, the next one I'm going to ask you about, my guessing laugh, because when a Jew says this word, it never comes out right. Okay. Tell me about your gnocchi. Gnocchi. Tell me about that, because you said to me when I was talking about the show, you said, "Oh, you got to come back and try that." And I did go back, and you were right, because I usually don't get that, because to me it's too heavy, and then usually put in a heavy sauce, and that's too heavy. So, and I can eat heavy food, but it's normally too heavy for me. This melted in my mouth. I mean, it didn't taste like, I don't know if it was made differently, but it didn't taste like it normally does.
Well, Gary, to any Italian chef, your homemade pastas are your pride, your baby. So Yes, our gnocchis are homemade, and I call them clouds. You put them in your mouth, and you don't need to even bite into them. It melts in your mouth.
Absolutely.
I do a traditional potato gnocchi, and I usually serve it either with a bolognese, which is a beautiful silky meat sauce, or I do a pesto as well with my gnocchi. But yes, anyone that can come to my restaurant, they know I'll get a table of 6, and they'll call me ahead of time and say, George, we're serving 6 orders of your gnocchi. Reason being because, honestly, you taste my homemade gnocchi and you taste another gnocchi that might be frozen, pre-made.
I don't know that I've ever had it fresh until
There's no comparison. There's no comparison.
Yeah, I never had it. So let me ask, what do you, as a chef, what is it that you like to cook? If you went back into the kitchen, what do you enjoy to cook?
Oh my God! I thought you said we only have 30 minutes. What don't I like to cook? I mean, I love when I get a call and make a reservation, and the husband says to me, "Listen, my wife is extremely picky." You know what? I'm in heaven when that happens, because bring it on, baby. Give me the challenge. Tell me what you want, but whether it's a traditional pasta pomodoro. Just with the right type of tomatoes and the extra virgin olive oil and the right amount of garlic. Actually, it's never too much garlic, but that's another conversation. Or to get someone that requires a gluten-free need. So,
well, gluten-free is big now, but if you take out the gluten, does it still taste good? I think I love gluten.
Yes.
You can still make it taste good?
I can still make it taste awesome.
Okay.
But between the whole, either whole wheat pasta or gluten-free and all of that, or you have the ladies with no oil, no this. I'll make anything and it will taste amazing.
Okay, now we're going to talk marinara. When I went in for our pre-interview, we were talking about the differences in the restaurants and the sauces, and I said, well, one of the big things that I notice is a good sauce. Even regular pizza joint, when they make this sauce, the pizza's so much better. And I asked you about your marinara and your marinara, and your face lit up, and you got so excited talking about your sauce, and you got into the whole thing, and I could see, seriously, I mean, all kidding aside, you were like so passionate as I am about my business. That's the way you got when I talk about when you talked about your sauce. So tell us. I wouldn't have asked the question, but you were so into it. So tell us about the why is your marinara sauce different?
Well, Gary, first of all, the French have 4 to 5 mother sauces, depending on who you talk to, whether it's the bechamel or the veloute. Or Italians, we have marinara. That is our mother sauce of all mother sauces. And that is liquid. People call olive oil liquid gold. To me, that's liquid gold, the marinara. It's a vast majority of the components of my menu contain, in one way or another, the marinara. So it requires love, passion, and time. You need to be patient with it. And we prepare our marinara sauce traditional style. We crush the tomatoes by hand. We don't use any tools. It's all school. If there's anything that you want to call it old school, my marinara sauce is certainly old school.
So what's the difference between Eric's Italian Bistro and the local chains, as I mentioned, whether it's Carrabba's or Olive Garden? Because you go there and the food is decent. It's not. You never. I think it's consistent. I say you never get a bad meal, but you never get a really good meal either. So what would you say the difference? I know what I feel it is, but what do you think the difference between those chains and your Italian restaurant?
Well, Gary, I mean, love is not something that you talk about. Love is something that it has to be shown, and I believe that our food shows the love that goes into it. And one of the things that impressed you also when you come in is I was like, Gary, and by the way, that's my wife,
absolutely,
that's my son, that's my sister, that's my nephew. We are absolutely 100% a family-run restaurant.
Right.
And not just myself, but my entire family knows all of our regulars. I mean, any time that they go, one of our family members, if not all of us, are there.
Yeah, and I noticed when you're even the people who came in, the other diners, most of them knew you. You know, oh, how's Finn? He has this. They, you know.
How's Nick doing in school?
You were kissing half your customers, but I see why people come there because it's like going to a family place, and I think people like when they recognize. I like when I go in if they recognize the owner recognizes me, or the host recognizes me when I go in.
It's really, Gary. It really feels good. I mean, listen. Italians, Latins, we definitely have a strong family bond, and let me tell you, my customers are family. I mean, we are constantly being invited to their homes, this and that. They inquire about us. They show a true care also for me. So the least that I can do, for the fact that not only do they support me from a business aspect, but they also show me a true care of my family life, everyone there. So that responsibility brings me back when I used to cook for my sisters, or I would want to impress my immediate family on a Thanksgiving dinner, like I mentioned before.
Right.
So it's nice.
Good. So what makes Eric's? That's the difference between the chains. I think it was. I mean, that was an easy question because it was an obvious answer between the chains and your restaurant. But what makes there are, as you mentioned, there's some other good restaurants. There's some smaller restaurants. What makes Eric's Bistro different than some of the other smaller restaurants that are out there? I know one of the things you mentioned, which I didn't even know about when I asked, no steam tables, and I had no idea what a steam table was. So tell us what a steam table is.
We prepare everything to order. Many restaurants, the common practice is that you'll have a steam table where you will have soup, sauces, sometimes even dishes already pre-prepared. So all they do is just throw them in the oven or slap it from a pot into the plate and it goes out. We don't do that. My entire line, it's nothing but chilled products that have been pre-cut, be ready. Nothing touches a pan until the order is placed. Of course, there are exceptions, lasagnas, whatnot, that need to be done ahead of time, but I got to say 90 to 95% of it, it's prepared to order. And that's a very, very big difference. And also, the other big thing that I think separates us from the rest is that one of my lines that at every employee meeting that I have before we start the evening, my biggest slogan is, we never say no to family. So somebody comes in, and can I have this way? Can I remove this? Can I add this? The answer is always absolutely.
So that doesn't annoy you when they come in and say, hey, don't put pepper, don't put garlic, put a little bit more chunks in there. That doesn't annoy you?
Far from it. That's the last
I always
thing.
think people get annoyed when you ask them that the waitress is going to write it down and it comes out wrong.
From a chef perspective, they're like, I believe that if you want to be in this business, the last thing that you need to do is be cocky or to be so arrogant that, only the way that I make the dish can come out good. So, like I said before, bring it on. Give me a challenge. I'll change it up. It will be outstanding.
And I think that's nice for the viewers watching if you want to go to a place, because I personally, I'm not that picky. There's a couple of things I don't like. I don't like chunks of tomatoes. Well, that's the only and cilantro. I hate cilantro. But anyway, so when I go into a place, those are two things. But, I know a lot of people in my family, they don't like spicy, they don't like garlic, they don't like gluten. And I'm like, oh, geez, where are we going to go to dinner? Because nobody's going to be happy. But in your place, you don't mind. So I'm going to have to take them all out there and give you that challenge. We'll see the next time I have you back on the show if you change your philosophy on that once the Jacobs family shows up. One of the things another thing that you had talked about was being involved in the community. And I know as a business owner, people hit me up all the time for, free this, free that. And but you're very involved. I mean, when we were there, you were giving something, you're participating in some event. Tell me about your involvement in the community. And you were telling me how important that was. It's not just a slogan. You were really heartfelt when you were telling me how important it was to be involved in the community. So tell our viewers why it's so important for you to get involved in all these community things.
The community is our families, our kids, our loved ones that are sick. So whether it's the school district, whether it's the Leukemia Foundation, the Heart Foundation, we we have always, in one way or another, participating on any type of fundraising that takes place, Mineola, Garden City, anywhere in the surroundings, whether it's in the form of giving out food, to actually go in there and do cooking presentations, gift certificates, baskets of things and whatnot. I strongly believe that you need to pass it forward, and indeed we do that. You know, I send emails to my. I have an email club, and I send emails saying, "Listen, you know, if you're in charge of a fundraising, please reach out to us." And we always.
No, that's very nice to be part of the community. We're starting to run short on time, but just one story. It's sort of a family joke. When we used to go out when we were young, we would go to the diners all the time, usually the Dick Hills Diner on Deer Park Avenue. And we would go out, and if somebody at the table, one of the kids, my brother, my sister, or I, would order, say, seafood, my father would say, "What are you doing? You're at a diner. You don't order seafood." Somebody would order steak. "You don't order steak at a diner. You order the basics." And yet, when I'm in your restaurant, an Italian restaurant, and I saw you had, I think, 3 different steaks on the menu, and maybe because it's ingrained in me, I say, well, why would I order steak in an Italian restaurant? To me, if I want steak, I'll go to a steakhouse. Why should someone order steak? We got to make it quick. But should somebody order steak in your place, or should they stick with the Italian pastas and Parmesans and things like that, or gnocchi?
Okay. Our steaks, first of all, we only use Angus and prime beef, so that's number one. Number two, again, it's whether it is that you're a steak and potato kind of person that just wants a plain steak. The way that we sear it, the way you need to know how to rest the steak. You need to, if you're going to pre-slice it, how to do it. Again, it's love. It doesn't have to be a multi-ingredient dish for you to show a love. And steak, I love the question because it's one of those perfect minimal ingredient dishes, but yet you can still show the love and the quality. Absolutely. Okay. Tender and flavorful.
You got to wrap. Again, you know, it's a pleasure having you. I've never had, you know, a restaurateur on the phone, but I do love restaurants, and you know what? When you want to go out to a nice place, it's nice to have a little bit of the backstory on a restaurant, you know, just going in and order it. So, you know, I would urge anybody who's watching the show, you want to try something different, you know, wherever you're from on the island, go try Eric's Italian Bistro in Mineola. If you want to check out a little bit more about the restaurant, I just liked your Facebook page, so you can go to Eric's Italian Bistro Facebook page, give it a like, and like I said, give it a try. It's a great restaurant. There's a lot more that I didn't get to. They do a very nice Thanksgiving dinner. They have 2 separate rooms, so you can do a private event there with as little as 20 to 30 people and still have a nice room. They have other events. So again, George, thank you very much, and I look forward to eating. And I'm sort of hoping now that I did the show, I get a free meal out of this.
Absolutely.
Okay, and it was worth it. I'm Gary Jacobs, and thank you for watching Long Island Backstory. We appreciate you guys coming back every week to watch us. If you like the show, please go to the bottom of your screen and click share. That's if you're watching it on Facebook or YouTube. If you're watching it on TV, on Cablevision, I guess just go ahead and like it on Facebook and tell everybody about it. We'll see everybody next week. And George, thanks again.
Thank you.